Almost 4 years on after its official launch, the Pixel 4 is no longer part of Google's future plans. It was the last true flagship until the launch of the Pixel 6 series in 2021. What worked and where does it stand today? Well, let's find out together. Thanks for watching 9to5Google here on YouTube. Remember to thumbs up, hit subscribe and then tap the bell icon to be among the first to watch our upcoming videos. When we look at the physical dimensions, the size, the shape, the design of the Pixel 4, it doesn't really look like any Pixel device before it and even since it. I should clarify that this is visually at least my favourite Google design. The matte black side rails and the frosted finish I think have aged pretty exceptionally in my own opinion, especially as I've worn this with the case. However, it's not a particularly durable design and a number of hardware problems have tainted the legacy of what I would say is a striking smartphone. A number of complaints online suggest that battery bloat has killed off lots of devices out there, but I will say I'm lucky enough to have my own unit survive this particularly frustrating flaw. This persists, or this happens when the glass backplate pops off due to the internal cell expanding and pushing the frame apart at its seams. It's not clear how many devices have been affected by this issue, but the Pixel 4 was one of the only Google phones to really or truly suffer from such an issue. Frustrations aside, little touches like the colourful power button and the two-tone rear panel with that matte black side rails of the oh-so orange and the clearly white do stand apart from devices released in and around the same time period. This really does feel like the height of the playful era of Google design, and since then, only the Pixel 6 in Coral and the Seafoam model have offered anything remotely similar and arguably to greater effect. The removal of the fingerprint or rear fingerprint scanner also cleans up the aesthetic, something that many people lauded and some people out there will head down to the comments and tell me they hated. I will say I've always felt that the design kept one foot in the past, but with an eye on the future. It's softened, approachable, and felt a world apart from the recent Pixel 7 and 7 Pro, for better or worse. And there's also a toy-like quality that I think has been slowly chipped off the Pixel lineup to appeal to a wider audience, be that a good thing or a bad thing depending on how you feel about it. At the front, things are all changed as well over the Pixel 3 XL and that bathtub notch specifically. One of the most unique screen layouts of the era awaits you when you turn this phone over, and that is to make way for the Soli radar and 3D face scanning tech. It means that the notch itself is leveled out and we have quite a big forehead. This shifts the 5.7 and 6.3 inch screens down to create a strange bottom aligned face area of this device. Screens are rated at Full HD Plus and QHD Plus for the Pixel 4 and 4 XL respectively, and the 90Hz refresh rate elevates good screens into the borderline excellent category. These completely flat panels were the perfect home for the introduction of fully gesture navigation, which was something that was added in Android 10. Flat screens are having something of a renaissance today, and we applauded the inclusion at the time of this flat screen when we saw more and more phones starting to ship and edge towards curved screens. Google hasn't been able to resist the lure of rounded screen corners in recent years, especially with the Pro models, but flat screens are just easier to use with gesture-based controls, as I note, which were introduced at the same time. Calibration and display tuning on this screen are actually one of the strengths of the Google Pixel series wholesale. The maximum brightness though is not exactly great here at 444 nits, and it does mean that outdoor legibility was always way below par, and this diminished the experience of using this phone on a day-to-day basis when colours look crisp, clear and accurate in the right lighting conditions. It's a big disappointment not to be able to see things legibly or clearly in all lighting conditions. From a pure benchmark perspective, it's actually hard to believe that the company no longer supports what is the third most potent Google smartphone. Only the Pixel 6 and Pixel 7 have more under-the-hood grunt available at your fingertips, courtesy of Tensor and Tensor G2. The increasing cost of 5G connectivity was actually cited for the downgrade for the Pixel 5 right through to the Pixel 5a. Obviously, they shipped with a mid-range Qualcomm chipset, and this processor, or the choice for this processor, enabled super-fast wireless connections, but did come at the cost of overall performance. The Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 is used by the Pixel 4 and 4 XL, and is by no means a powerful chip by 2023 standards. It is, however, a chip that will stand alongside many current low to mid-range phones out there, and this is reflected in just how well the Pixel 4 can do the basics today. Heck, as the third place performing Pixel, it can actually run rings around the Pixel 5, the 4a 5G, and the Pixel 5a. That latter handset as well, launched in 2021, and actually stands to be supported until 2024, but it likely won't age as well as the Pixel 4 as a result. Android 13 therefore runs just as well here as it does on the Pixel 5, and in some areas the Pixel 6 series. Sure, the 6GB of RAM might throw a few apps or two out of memory when you do tons of multitasking. RAM management though is pretty solid after the disaster of the Pixel 3's memory leaks and lack of ability to hold more than a few apps in stasis in the background. It was one of the first major indications that we saw, at least in the Pixel series, that Google was aware that not all problems can be fixed with software updates. Hardware needs upgrades too, although they were modest on the Pixel 4. Many of the performance boosts were also provided by Google Assistant and machine learning powered functions, which now in hindsight seem really strange given how core they are to the experience. You had things like call screening, live captions, the new Google Assistant, and more features like that were baked here in Android 10 for Pixel phones. Many more similar capabilities have joined the fold and helped complete the software stack on Pixel phones since 2019. A larger long-term issue has been the 64GB of base storage, and this has been remedied of course with subsequent releases upping to 128GB, but it's been a problem with the Pixel 4 since day one. 4K video on large applications and games can quickly clutter up your device. The usable space is also decreased as the Android system now requires at least 13GB of free storage available, and that leaves just 51GB of usable storage for you on your device. That might not be a problem to you, but it will be a problem long term as applications balloon in size and your videos and images start to stack up on that internal storage. It's something that can't be remedied as you can't expand the storage here either. So if you want to offload files, it starts to become a bit of a problem. One thing that is striking though when returning to use the Pixel 4 is actually the speed of unlocking when your facial data is registered. Sure, a software-based version of Face Unlock has been added to help reduce the woes of an in-display fingerprint scanner on newer models, but true 3D face scanning tech is a breath of fresh air whenever I do return to my Pixel 4 XL. Annoyingly though, not every application supports the feature for biometrics, but we would love to see it re-added in a future flagship Pixel phone. It's just so fluid that you're using your phone before you're even thinking about tapping a fingerprint scanner or entering a PIN, and that's something that we think Google needs to provide more of, unburdenless functions that get you going with your phone and you don't think about it. There are also a number of reasons that Soli, the extra added tech, is more of a gimmick than a truly useful addition to your smartphone. There is obviously a reason why it was only used on one device. A miniature radar is capable of tracking the motion of your hands for face and face unlocking too. The inclusion is still interesting almost 4 years after it was announced, although maybe not so due to the functionality. Soli itself is capable of understanding human motion and has never really been truly utilised to its greatest potential by Google. The most we have is the ability to wave your hand to skip, pause, playing music and audio, alarms, and even silence your phone calls. This was packaged in the Pixel 4 as motion sense, but it has detrimental effects on phone battery life despite being fairly cool from the outset. It could be considered innovative if it was used in more areas, such as the ability to use a hands-free camera shutter or even increase device volume without touching the screen. As it stands though, it just feels like a lost relic of a time when Google really struggled to remain in touch with the biggest Android players and threw everything at the board to see what stuck. Obviously Soli and that motion sense tech really didn't stick around for very long. A long time has also passed since the Pixel 4 series launched with Android 10 pre-installed. Since then, the operating system has had a rebirth to accompany the soft relaunch of the Pixel series, which started in 2021 with the Pixel 6. Material U though is right at home on this high refresh rate display. It basically is made for high refresh rates, at least in our opinion. It feels absolutely in lockstep with the performance you can expect from the Pixel 5 as well, and at no point do I feel like the system overpowers the internals like it can on some older devices. Alas though, Android 13 is the third and final version of Android that the Pixel 4 will ever see, at least officially, and the last update was sent out in October 2022, and that includes the July 2022 patch. It feels more painful here than many other Pixel handsets, as the hardware itself is more than capable of running Android 14 and probably with a pretty fluid experience. At least this is still the final Pixel though to launch with the ability to squeeze to activate the Google Assistant, as this is something again we'd love to see used again in future. Overall though, the performance and software has held this device in good stead. It just leaves a sour taste in the mouth with that update schedule. One thing that I don't think a lot of people remember is that the Pixel 4 and 4 XL were actually the first devices to ship with a dual rear camera system, and interestingly this camera system compromises of a main wide and 2x telephoto lens, which is a unique combination in the Made by Google lineup. Every follow-up handset is comprised of a wide and ultra-wide, provided there at least is a dual camera system on board. And because of the lack of the ultra-wide, the camera capabilities have been shaped more by the rigid focal lengths available here. I'm of the opinion that a telephoto lens is vastly superior day-to-day to you than an ultra-wide lens. Super Res Zoom helps improve their fairly limited 2x zoom capabilities with an 8x digital zoom available, and post-processing helps produce sharp, clear images up to around that 4 to 5 zoom range. Beyond that though, you'll get poor quality photos when compared to the latest and greatest. Even back in 2019 though, this limited dual setup fell behind the likes of the Galaxy S10, the iPhone 11, the Huawei P30 Pro and many more due to flexibility. Even with this in mind though, sticking with that familiar 12 megapixel Sony IMX363 main sensor was actually a great move at the time, as Google could be at the forefront of computational photography and owning their own capabilities rather than compete with the pure hardware of many other phones I've just mentioned. Improvements such as dual exposure controls, astrophotography and white balance meant that images from the Pixel 4 series still hold up really well, despite how modest things seem today. It's nowhere near the standard of the Pixel 7 or Pixel 6, as you would expect of a 4-year-old system, but the core sensor remains identical to a number of handsets out there, which is a blessing as years of extra tuning has helped elevate a one-time exceptional point-and-shoot smartphone camera each passing year. Despite using that same main sensor as the Pixel 6a though, you won't have exactly the same end results. There are though a number of photos I have taken with the Pixel 4 XL that I count among the best I've captured on any smartphone, and I'd wager that many long-time owners would have similar sentiments about their own stills. Google's approach of using older sensors at launch may seem silly at the time, but it does benefit you in the long run, and the Pixel 4, like many other older models, is testament to that. We're not going to delve too deeply into the battery longevity of an almost 4-year-old smartphone, but it would be unfair to gloss over major problems that faced the Pixel 4 series way back at launch. One of the biggest complaints about the devices was the pretty woeful and inadequate lifespan. Of course, this wasn't an experience for everyone, but it was a problem for many people nonetheless. To Google's credit, the Pixel 4 XL specifically was improved steadily with updates and tuning, although it wasn't completely terrible from day one thanks to a 3700 mAh maximum capacity. That said, the paltry 2800 mAh internal cell on the smaller Pixel 4 was absolutely no match for a 90Hz Full HD Plus screen and that Soli radar sensor. It's certainly not clear what the reasoning was to use such a small internal cell with a power-hungry panel plus added sensors, at least as far as we're concerned, but trying to tune that display down to 60Hz isn't even enough to run this device for longer than a few hours each day before it will go flat. It's hard to be too harsh on a device, or at least with the lens of time. That said, even back in 2019, it's truly hard to understand what Google's thought processes were and why smaller than average internal cells were used or adopted, rather than just upping the capacities, maybe increasing the chassis size a little bit more, and ensuring that you can use your phone uninhibited all day. So looking back at the Pixel 4 and 4 XL, they're prime examples of the duality of Google. A bigger, bolder and arguably better product which is hampered by problems that could have been fixed with a little oversight and a little extra time in the oven. By the time Android 11 was released, the Pixel 4 XL was a much better device than it ever was at launch, and it felt like the poster child for that fix-it-in-post school of product launches that Google seems to be fond of. It's tough to suggest that the Pixel 4 though was anything underrated. It was actually hamstrung and held back from being a truly brilliant addition to the Made by Google smartphone lineup because of those problems. Soli offered little and was sold as a key feature, and didn't even work in some regions due to legal restrictions on radar technology. The core tenets of the Pixel 4 XL specifically meant a very capable smartphone was available during the era in which it was released. It has aged better than it ought to in many regards, but one that has really fumbled the fundamentals. And this doesn't stop it from leaving a sour taste in our mouth by the missed potential on offer. In the cold light of 2023, it piles on more annoyance. as there are very few real reasons that the Pixel 4 and 4 XL should be left on Android 13, given that newer devices come with diminished or inferior internals and will be supported for longer too, but that's another argument for another day. Despite just falling short of our expectations, the Pixel 4 feels like the most googly of all of the Pixel lineup today, which has proven to be a blessing and a curse in both ways. It may not go down as the best Pixel ever, but it was easily one of the most experimental. Do you think that the Pixel 4 deserved the criticism it has received, or do you have a different opinion entirely? Let us know down in the comments sections below. It's a polarising device in many ways. Hopefully though you enjoyed this look back at a now discontinued Pixel phone, but until next time, this is Damien with 9to5 Google saying thanks for watching, and I will speak to you later.